70 days ago, these two red-billed oxpeckers had never raised a chick together. They met while feeding on the back of an African buffalo. The male moved closer first. He called softly, lowered his wings, and followed the female across the buffalo's shoulder. For several minutes, they fed only a few feet apart. Then the distance between them began to disappear. Their courtship was brief. The buffalo beneath them barely reacted. To the giant mammal, the birds were little more than light movements across its skin. But for the oxpeckers, this meeting would begin an entirely new generation. Within days, the pair had bonded. They left the buffalo herd and began searching the surrounding woodland. They needed more than a branch. They needed a cavity deep enough to hide eggs from heat, rain, snakes, and other predators. The pair inspected cracks in old trunks and narrow openings beneath broken branches. Most were too shallow. Some were already occupied. Then they found a small, oval entrance in a weathered acacia tree. The cavity was dark, dry, and protected. It would become the center of their lives for the next several weeks. The birds began carrying material inside: dry grass, fine roots, and soft hair collected from the animals they followed. Each load was small, but after hundreds of trips, the hard wooden cavity became a lined nest. The females soon laid the first egg, then another. By the time the clutch was complete, 3 pale speckled eggs rested in the darkness. Now the pair faced a different challenge. The eggs had to remain warm. One bird stayed inside, while the other returned to the buffalo herd to feed. Then they changed places. Every trip away from the nest carried a cost. Too long outside, and the eggs could cool. Too little time feeding, and the adults would lose the energy needed to continue. The pair divided their time between the hidden nest and the moving animals that supplied their food. Days passed. Inside each egg, a tiny body began to form. A heartbeat started. Small limbs developed. A soft bill pressed against the inner wall of the shell. Then, one morning, the first egg moved. A narrow crack appeared. The adult waited nearby as the shell opened slowly from within. The chick that emerged was almost naked. Its eyes were closed. Its body was weak, pink-gray, and covered with only a trace of dark down. It could not stand. It could not regulate its own temperature. And it could not survive for long without food. The chick's first response was simple. It opened its mouth. One parent arrived with a small insect. The chick swallowed it immediately. The adults returned again and again. Some meals were soft insects. Others were tiny ticks collected from the skin of buffalo and other large mammals. At this stage, the chick did not know where the food came from. It only recognized movement at the entrance and the touch of a bill. The chick began growing quickly. Its eyes opened. Dark feather pins appeared along its back and wings. Its legs strengthened enough to lift its body from the nest lining. Each day, it reacted more strongly when the adults returned. The quiet cavity became crowded with movement. Outside, danger remained close. A climbing predator approached the lower trunk. Both adults called sharply from nearby branches. The chick lowered itself inside the cavity and became still. The intruder never reached the entrance, but the encounter revealed why the parents had chosen a deep hollow instead of an exposed nest. As the chick grew, the world outside became impossible to ignore. Light entered through the oval opening. The sounds of the savanna carried into the nest. Hooves crossed dry ground beneath the tree. Buffalo passed through the grass. Adult oxpeckers arrived from the herd with food still held in their bills. To the chick, these enormous animals were only moving shapes beyond the entrance. Soon, they would become the place where it would search for food. But first, it had to leave the nest. Its juvenile feathers now covered most of its body. Its wings were still shorter than those of the adults, but strong enough for practice. The chick climbed toward the entrance. It gripped the bark with curved claws and beat its wings inside the narrow opening. Loose down floated into the air. The first attempts were clumsy. The chick lost balance and dropped back into the cavity. It climbed again. Each movement strengthened the muscles it would need in flight. By day 70, the juvenile stood at the edge of the nest. The ground below was far beyond the safety of the cavity. One parent waited on a nearby branch. The other crossed between the tree and the buffalo herd. The chick leaned forward. Its wings opened. Then it jumped. For a moment, the young bird dropped beneath the entrance. Its wings beat unevenly. Its body tilted sideways. But the fall became a short flight. The juvenile reached a low branch and gripped it tightly. It had not yet become a skilled tick hunter. It had never landed on a buffalo. It had never pulled a parasite from moving skin. Those lessons would come later. But the most important barrier had been crossed. 70 days earlier, its parents had only just found each other. Now their chick had left the nest and entered the moving world beyond it.